Hey, Joe Bob Briggs here with the #1 rule for a TNT Monstervision movie. Anybody can die at any moment.
Watch When Dinosaurs Ruled the Earth, next on TNT's Monstervision.
Hey, it's Joe Bob Briggs. Did y'all hear about this? I ran into Rusty Tisworthy down at the pool hall a couple days ago. Now, normally Rusty's down there taking up space by making bets on how many times you can twist the wing nut on the bottom of a Mixmaster. And Rusty starts telling this nasty story about the sex he had last weekend. And let me tell you, Rusty is one of those guys who, when he talks about sex, you don't even realize it's sex, because he uses words that make it sound like an autopsy. So sometimes Rusty can even gross out Fender Strock, and Fender Strock served 6 years in the Ellis unit of the state prison. So we were all gagging and diving under tables and ordering Ozark spring water to wash the taste out of our mouth when I tried to get Rusty off the subject by saying, okay, now, Rusty, what girl was bimbo enough to make the sign of the epileptic orangutan with you, and what birth control clinic is she visiting this morning? And Rusty kind of leans back up against the table, crosses one boot over the other one, and he grins at me, and he says, Charlotte Bolt. And the whole pool hall got eerily quiet, like that sound just before the tornado sucks your toilet up into a tree. And since nobody else was saying anything, I said, Rusty, I think she's about, has she turned 16 yet? And Rusty says, turned 16 Saturday night. We were celebrating. So I said, Rusty, if anybody in this pool hall knows the words of the Miranda warning, I think we should run get them right now. And he goes, what? What? That's legal in Texas. Now, have you ever noticed that if somebody doesn't know whether something is legal or not, they always add in Texas to it? People who have never picked up a book in their life, much less a law book, always know exactly what's legal in Texas and illegal in Texas. You know, illegal to drive barefoot in Texas. How many times have you heard that one, you know? Like if you were driving barefoot in Louisiana, it'd be perfectly fine, but you can't drive barefoot in Texas. So Rusty, I'm telling him, remember when Steve Sturgis almost went to jail last year over that other girl? And Rusty says, yeah, well, that's when she was 15. And besides, they didn't do nothing to him. And I said, well, they didn't do nothing to him because Steve was 18. And he says, that's right, legal adult. So you're telling me they didn't do nothing to legal adult Steve Sturgis, but they're going to do something to me when it's the same thing? I said, Rusty, you're 37. And he says, that's right, over 18, same difference. And I said, well, I thought you said it was 16 in Texas. And he goes, well, it is. It's 16 in Texas. And she didn't produce no ID. And I said, oh, that's different. Why didn't you tell me? No ID. And Rusty says 16's legal anyhow, according to the Texas legislature. How else could Tanya Scranton get married last year? She was 14. And I said, well, her parents gave their consent. Did you get the consent of Charlotte's parents to celebrate her birthday? And Rusty goes, oh. See, all arguments with Rusty Tisworthy eventually end in the words, oh. So, anyway, we've got my personal criminal attorney, Bubba Barclay, flying in from Bossier City to start working on the case. Unfortunately, Charlotte Bolt says the only way she'll protect Rusty is if he agrees to go on a date with her every Saturday night. So we're trying to reason with the girl, but she's a Bolt. Fortunately, there were only about 30 witnesses in the pool hall to what he said, so we're shooting for supervised probation, you know what I mean? And speaking of dark, slimy underbellies, we've got more of those great Hammer Films Dinosaurs tonight. Hammer Films of England, the low-budget outfit, was doing Dinosaurs long before Steven Spielberg was a sperm cell. And the ones we're going to watch tonight is When Dinosaurs Ruled the Earth. This is a movie Hammer decided to make after the enormous success of their first prehistoric caveman movie, 1 Million Years BC, starring Raquel Welch, who will be forever remembered for her furry loincloth and the contents thereof. She was the first cave woman to wear a push-up bra, but hardly the last, as you'll see during the opening scenes of this movie, where virtually every cave woman alive is drop-dead gorgeous and wearing 2 strips of fuzzy dental floss. Anyhow, there's not a single word of English dialogue in this flick because Well, because they're cavemen, and Victoria Vitri is the blonde bombshell who narrowly escapes human sacrifice. Robin Hawden is the hunky caveman who loves her. Patrick Allen is the chief who's trying to do these dang human sacrifices the correct way so that the sun doesn't explode. And Imogen Hassall is the fragile little cave girl who gets dumped when the blonde cave girl shows up. So, depending on your point of view, this is either a camp classic or a masterpiece of stop-motion animation. Either way, it's kind of a fun movie. We're going to do the drive-in totals later because they're signaling to me. As usual, I took up too much time, but roll the film.
Back to Monstervision host Joe Bob Briggs and When Dinosaurs Ruled the Earth on TNT.
Don't you just hate it when those dinosaurs get loose like that and you have to set them on fire? That was just the first of many stop-motion dinosaur animation scenes done by Jim Danforth, who was nominated for a visual effects Oscar for the work he did in this very movie. The dinosaur with a rope around its neck is actually called a plesiosaur. Anyway, Jim Danforth is an Ohio boy who got his start working for Art Clokey, the creator of, does anybody know who Art Clokey is? Gumby, that's right. The dinosaur work is great, but you might have noticed that this picture did not get nominated for best screenwriting, like that cat fight between the two brunettes. What was that about? Why does the chief just point to these two women and they start fighting? I didn't get that. Oh, and I forgot. Let me give you those drive-in totals from that we forgot before. We have 14 dead bodies, 2 dead dinosaurs, 1 dead deer, 1 dead pterodactyl, skull pounding, 4 death plunges, including 1 flailing dinosaur plunge, 2 cat fights with flaming sticks, 4 dinosaur attacks with human stomping and caveman goring, 1 pterodactyl attack, 1 giant crab attack, giant dinosaur death match, raw meat chomping, leapfrog tribal dancing, giant snake attack, dive bombing vultures, 1 Viking funeral, hut burning, ritualistic wailing, 1 bimbo eating flytrap, baby dinosaur frolicking, caveman aardvarking, 1 tidal wave, 3.5 stars. Check it out. And that's it for that. I do love the ceremonial lizard head outfits on those guys who were pounding skulls and swinging the slingshots in the opening scene, preparing to sacrifice blonde virgins with enormous breasts while speaking the special prehistoric language invented by writer-director Val Guest just for this movie. There were a total of 27 words that all the actors had to learn. They claimed it was a combination of Latin, Sanskrit, and Phoenician. I don't think so. I think it was a combination of cochise and baby talk. Because listen to them when they talk. They repeat the same phrases over and over again. Okay, back to When Dinosaurs Ruled the Earth. Let me see if I can do it. Nijay Krasta Makan Nikro Tidak. That means come fast, kill evil flying monster. We know that from the press kit. Nijay Krasta Makan Nikro TNT production executive. Coming up, the expertly choreographed authentic tribal dancing scene. It might look like leapfrog, but it's actually a sacred caveman ritual.
Back to Monstervision host Joe Bob Briggs and When Dinosaurs Ruled the Earth on TNT.
Yeah, caveman relationships are just hell, aren't they? That's Victoria Vitri in the lead cave girl role, replacing Raquel Welch from 1 Million Years BC, the movie that inspired this one. Victoria Vitri was better known as Angela Dorian, the 1968 Playboy Playmate of the Year, and I have no idea why she changed her name for this one movie. There were some nude scenes, by the way, that were seen only in the British version of the flick, because in 1971, America still wasn't quite ready for naked women on the big screen, especially in dinosaur movies, which were aimed mostly at kids. And actually, the theory was in these movies, dinosaurs for the kids and pretty girls in loincloths for the dads who had to take the kids to see the movie. So anyway, Angela Dorian, also known as Victoria Vitri, also known as Sana the Fleeing Cave Girl, was a busy actress in the 60s. She was a guest star on Bonanza and The Man from U.N.C.L.E. and Perry Mason and Run for Your Life and Hogan's Heroes and Land of the Giants and Batman and the Big Valley. She had a little part in Rosemary's Baby. And then she got the Playmate of the Year thing, and within 3 years, she was the low-budget queen. In fact, she starred in one of the most famous drive-in movies of all time, Invasion of the B-Girls, better known as Graveyard Trance. Well, what did they say on the poster? They bite, they squeeze, they're ready to please. Graveyard Tramps. That movie came out in 1973 and played for at least 15 years as a second feature at drive-ins in the Deep South. But she was completely out of the business by about 1975. And by 1984, she was waiting tables in Southern California. So somebody asked the director, Val Guest, how she was to work with, and he says, not very bright, which I thought was kind of mean of Val. You know, you don't say something like that, especially if it's true. So anyway, Victoria Vitri, star of When Dinosaurs Ruled the Earth, was having a good time when she made this movie because the cast and crew were trapped on the Canary Islands for 7 weeks, and they didn't have many clothes on, as you can see, and all the cave girls were working on their full-body tans, and there were no lines to learn, so, you know, figure it out. According to Victoria, there were quite a few divorces when everybody returned to London. So just a little trivia as we get back to the man-eating dinosaur classic, When Dinosaurs Ruled the Earth. Victoria also kind of indicated that she was a party girl herself. Her direct quote was, "I was the first one to drop a loincloth. My kind of gal." I don't ever meet gals like that.
Back to Monstervision host Joe Bob Briggs and When Dinosaurs Ruled the Earth on TNT.
You know what that was? That was a chasmosaur that fell into that chasm and died. That was a great effect. But I have a question. Why did the cavemen just leave the wounded man there to fight off those vultures by himself? What's the deal with that? Val Guest, who wrote and directed this baby, admitted that the story was pretty lame, even though it was based on a treatment by J.G. Ballard, the guy who did Empire of the Sun, the novel, which became the Steven Spielberg movie. But Val Guest was one of the veteran directors at Hammer Films, and they gave it to him to do. Hammer was the great British independent filmmaker company who did all those stylish horror films from the 50s and 60s and 70s, like Dracula Has Risen from the Grave. But Val Guest was the man that they used for fantasy films and sci-fi. His most famous one was The Quatermass Experiment, which we showed last year under its American title, The Creeping Terror, because they didn't think Americans would like the word Quatermass. But Val also did The Abominable Snowman and The Day the Earth Caught Fire. But he started out as an actor at Warner Brothers in the early 30s, and then for many years he was the British editor of The Hollywood Reporter, and he wrote all the comedies of Will Hay. I don't even know if anybody remembers Will Hay. He was a comedian who's not that well known on this side of the Atlantic. Oh, Mr. Porter. That's a Will Hay movie, stuff like that. And then Val started doing thrillers like The Ghost Train. He did maybe 50 films, you know, by the end of his career. Lived in a big house on the Isle of Malta with his actress wife, and he was last seen teaching film at the College of the Desert in Palm Springs, California. All those British guys, they all go to Palm Springs eventually, don't they? All right, back to the movie. What kind of questions would you ask in Val Guest's film class, you know? Professor Guest, did Victoria Vitri have real breasts, or did she pay for those?
Back to Monstervision host Joe Bob Briggs and When Dinosaurs Ruled the Earth on TNT.
Akita. Nicha. Nicha Akita. Akita Nicha. Nicha. Akita. What is this with Akita? I think Akita means everything in the movie. It means everything from, hey, get a load of this, you know, Akita, to I feel awful today, you know, Akita, you know, to I love you, honey, Akita, you know. Anyway, one of my favorite scenes in the movie is when the jilted brunette cave girl, Ayak is her name, she goes and sits next to Tara on the beach, played by Robin Houghton. She wants to see if he still loves her, but you see on her face that she knows he doesn't. She does that whole wounded kitten thing throughout the movie, and you really end up kind of liking her. But anyway, that actress who played that part was Imogen Hassall, And she's a very interesting and a very sad story. In the late 60s, Imogen was thought of as one of the most beautiful women in the world. She was with the Royal Shakespeare Company for a while. She starred on the London stage. She was in The Avengers and in The Saint. And her friends were people like Michael Caine and Omar Sharif and Rod Steiger and Steve McQueen, male friends always. She always had male friends. And in order to get the roles she wanted, she liked to dress up in the most outrageously revealing dresses and show up at premieres. So the tabloids in London started calling her the Queen of Cleavage and the Queen of the Premiere. And it had an effect on how she was perceived by producers and directors, and they started not taking her quite so seriously. So along about the time this film was made, she was in 7 other movies this same year that this movie came out. She realized that she had blown it and that a lot of the world was kind of laughing at her. And so in September of 1970, before this movie even came out, she tried to kill herself with an overdose of sleeping pills. And after that, her career really fell apart, and at the same time, she was desperate to get married and have kids, but her first marriage only lasted 8 months, and she had a baby girl who died after 1 week, and then she had a miscarriage, and then she was married again for just 2 months, and then she had another miscarriage. And in 1979, when she was 37 years old, she had become a shop girl making $50 a week. And a year after that, she did kill herself with sleeping pills, and her friends said, you know, it was not the first time she'd tried to do that. So Imogen Hassall as the wounded, jealous, despairing brunette cave girl in When Dinosaurs Ruled the Earth.
Back to Monstervision host Joe Bob Briggs and When Dinosaurs Ruled the Earth on TNT.
Akita. A whole lot of aardvarking going on now as the cavemen tame their cave women. It's too bad we can't show the European version because those gals spring those cave breasts right out of those cave bikinis and the guys go, Akita. Nadie Krusta Makan Nikro Tadak. Come fast, kill evil flying monster. We know that's what it means because Val Guest told us that's what it means. And the evil flying creature is called a Ramphorhynchus, for those of you who are taking the nerd test later. All right, this movie kind of grows on you, doesn't it? Back to When Dinosaurs Ruled the Earth, Akita. I use the term nerd with all due respect, by the way, because we're all nerds, every last one of us. Our motto on this show is the I'm a nerd, you're a nerd speech, as rendered by Robert Carradine in the final scene of Revenge of the Nerds, and that makes me the Nerdmeister. So that's why I can say words like Ramphorhynchus. In fact, if you're a nerd, I want you to come over here right now and stand by me. Just stand here with all us nerds. Remember when he does that? I love that movie.
Back to Monstervision host Joe Bob Briggs and When Dinosaurs Ruled the Earth on TNT.
That was a weird scene they stuck in there, that fight between 2 dinosaurs. That's the only dinosaur scene that was not done by Jim Danforth, the visual effects guy who was nominated for the Oscar for this movie. That was actually not animation at all. It was 2 real lizards fighting, and it was footage stolen from The Lost World, a movie from 1960, and the producers just liked the footage and decided to put it in. Now, obviously, that didn't make Jim happy. And that was not the only fight that he had with the producer, Aida Young. He wanted to create 2 other creatures for the movie. He planned to do an Allosaurus and a Tyrannosaurus, but she looked at his drawings and said that they looked like flaming homosexuals, and so she didn't want them in the movie. She thought his dinosaurs were gay, and she said, basically, we don't want no gay monsters in this movie. So, you know that story's got to be true, because who could make up something like that? So now everything comes together for the thrilling special effects jamboree in the conclusion of When Dinosaurs Ruled the Earth. But I have one question about this tidal wave coming. If a tidal wave is coming, do you think the best answer is to build a raft? I mean, here, honey, get the kids. We'll just sit on this raft on the beach and then the tidal wave can't hurt us. I mean, I know it's kind of what Noah did, you know, but he had a lot of prep time. You know, they find out about this tidal wave 5 minutes before it hits. That's just a question. So, you know, feel free to join in if you want to. Joe Bob Briggs still here. The sudden giant crab attack, followed by the sudden tidal wave, followed by Imogen Hassall drowning in quicksand, followed by the great scene of Patrick Allen as the tribal chieftain trying to yell at the tidal wave so it will go in the opposite direction, followed by True Love Triumphant. How can you not love that movie? When Dinosaurs Ruled the Earth. Kind of makes you want to go to the Canary Islands and buy a loincloth at the airport gift shop, doesn't it? Okay, next week at this time, we won't be here. For the first time in the history of this show, at least since I've been doing this show, we are actually taking a week off due to the big Elvis Death Day special, where all we do is show Elvis movies for 90 hours or some incredible number like that. Did Elvis make a monster movie? I guess he didn't, or else we would be on, wouldn't we? But 2 weeks from tonight, on the 23rd, we'll have Zombie Night, Return of the Living Dead 2, followed by Night of the Living Dead. The dead must rise, and they must be gross. Kind of an end-of-the-summer zombie special, so be watching for that in 2 weeks. Time for Joe Bob's last call, and I can already hear what you're going to say to me Monday morning. You're going to say, Joe Bob, why in the heck did you show Howard the Duck? And the reason is I'm one of the few people on the planet who actually likes Howard the Duck. I don't know if you remember, but when George Lucas made this, it was supposed to be the next super mega big deal monster hit movie, and they wouldn't tell anybody what the duck looked like. It was a big secret, and it was also a secret who was inside the duck suit and how the duck worked, and then the movie came out, and what happens? Quack, quack. You know, made about 20 cents, and everybody jumped all over it like sleaze on a congressman, and I don't think it's that bad. It was supposed to be the comic book version of E.T., where the duck is from a duck planet, and he gets sucked down to Earth, and he doesn't have any way to get home, and so he becomes the manager for a punk rock band, and he hangs around the employment agency and complains about the food. But the big difference between E.T. and Howard the Duck is that they made E.T. like real alien, and they made Howard like real human. And actually, I think they did darn near everything right except one thing, and I'll tell you what that one thing is later, but you'll probably figure it out yourself. But I think you might like this movie if you just kind of go with it and you say, hey, the character's a midget duck. I can accept that. This movie is about a midget duck walking around Cleveland in a duck suit. And don't sit there like a big shot movie critic saying, I can't believe how stupid this is. Well, of course it's stupid. It's the movies, okay? Roll it. We'll discuss this in greater detail later. See, if you go to the movie thinking, I'm going to hate this, then guess what? You're going to hate it. I think that's what people did in this case. You know, I ain't going to watch a midget duck. Okay, your loss.